Great, that sounds like
okay.
Set.
We go.
Thank you. Great, so hello, welcome everybody. Looking around the names and the faces, I definitely know some of you, some have not met before, so thank you all for coming along this afternoon. I'll introduce, so my name's Lauren, I work from the Wimbledon Foundation. I'm a Grants and Community Officer, and we're also joined by our newly joined Grants and Community Officer, Adil, who, if you wouldn't mind giving us a wave, Adil. This is Adil, so he and I are the grants officers from the Wimbledon Foundation. And we're also joined by Rich Horsnell, who, again, some of you may well know. He works for the London Community Foundation as a programme manager, and will introduce himself and his role in this grant process shortly. Abby, do you have the slides? Are you able to put them up for us?
Okay. 1 second. Sorry, Lauren. I thought you were doing that. Sorry.
Oh, am I able to?
You should be able to. I've done it so that participants should be able to share. But
oh, in which case, let me try.
Let me know if not. I've got the slide.
Upstairs, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just going to check. She's with Jacqueline at the moment. I'm just going to.
All good, Lauren.
Yeah.
Well done.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great. So I'll brief for those of you who don't know of the Wimbledon Foundation. I'll just give a quick overview. So we are the charity of the All England Club and the Championships, and we exist to help use the resources and the heritage of the club and the championships to support our local, national and international communities. We do that in a few different ways. One of the ways is that we get quite a lot of items that we can give out in support. So some things you might expect, like tennis balls, nets, tennis shoes, clothing. We also get some quite random items that we share, towels, sleeping bags. The plants at the end of the championships, they all go out to our local communities. So that's one big area of work. But the other area is grant giving and funding that we do. Our biggest focus is on our communities either side of the club, so Merton and Wandsworth. So we do a lot of grant funding through different programmes with different focuses and different themes across the two boroughs, one of which is the Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund, which is what we'll be talking to you about today. So this is the Wimbledon Foundation's oldest fund. It's been going pretty much since the foundation started nearly 2 years ago. Let me give you the most up-to-date figures. We've given out £820,000 across the two boroughs, over 167 grants. And so we run 2 rounds a year, one sort of this sort of time, autumn time, and then one again in the spring. So we'll get on to the themes of the fund, a few tips and the application process shortly. But I just wanted to hand over now to Richard from the London Community Foundation to explain a bit about his role in the process and introduce himself.
Thanks very much, Lauren. Hello, everyone. My name's Rich. I hope you're all well this afternoon. At the London Community Foundation, we've been really delighted over the last nearly 9 or 10 years now to have managed the Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund. And at the London Community Foundation, we manage a number of different funds for different donors. So to give you an idea, we support funds that are run by the Evening Standard, Peabody and L&Q housing associations, and developers such as Stanhope and Landsec. And what we do for most of the programmes, including the Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund, is primarily award grants to smaller community-based organisations. So there are exceptions to that. There are funds that's for large organisations, but normally most funds are for smaller groups, many of which are probably here today. So thanks to you all for attending. And I think what's really important about today's session is that myself and Lauren, can give you an indication of what we can fund through this particular programme, some key tips, hopefully, which will be useful, and some real examples of projects that have been funded in the past. So, yeah, so we're delighted to be here today and to manage the fund on behalf of the Wimbledon Foundation.
Thanks, Rich. So, Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund. So we thought we'd take you through, first of all, what the focus of the fund is, what the themes of the fund are, and you'll see the themes there listed on the screen. And what I'll do is I'll give you some real examples of projects we funded under each of these themes, just to give you a bit of an idea about what they might mean in life, and you might be able to see your own work reflected in some of those. So the first criteria for this fund is that work has to be delivered within Merton and or Wandsworth. So you don't need to necessarily be based in either of the boroughs, but the work does need to benefit residents of either of the boroughs. And what we'll be looking for is evidence of track record within the boroughs or of partnerships within the boroughs. If you're already working within the two areas, then that's a really great way of demonstrating that. If you're a larger charity or you're based elsewhere, but you're looking to start something up new in one of the two boroughs, then what we'd be interested in hearing about is, what partnerships are you getting in that local area? How will you encourage sign up from local residents? And how are you making sure you're not doing something that somebody else is already delivering within the two boroughs? So that's a pretty important one. What is on offer is grants of up to £10,000 to deliver a project over 1 year. We'll touch on the timelines later on in the session, but essentially you can look to start delivery from about December of this year for up to 1 year. So as I mentioned, there's 4 key themes to this fund: improving mental health and wellbeing, providing access to learning, training and employment skills, improving access to advocacy, support and advice, and encouraging participation in the communities. So as I mentioned, I'll go through each one of those and talk about them in a bit more detail and give you some examples as well. So improving mental health and wellbeing, that's, it arguably quite broad, but that's quite intentional, because we recognise that mental health and wellbeing itself is very broad, and people find comfort and find support within these areas in a lot of different ways. So, for example, projects that we funded under this theme include a weekly social group for women from refugee backgrounds. We've funded a youth group for young people who identify as LGBTQ+. And we've also run a healthy eating and cooking skills programme for older people. So this one, as you can see, it's quite broad, and there's the mental health side of things, but there's also the more general well-being as well. So the next thing, providing access to learning, training and employment skills. That's all about supporting people to take the next step within their employment or their training or their development. And that, of course, can range all the way from initial kind of confidence building or soft skills building within communications, right up to specific tailored learning or training or education programs as well. So some examples of this one that we funded, we've funded a youth club which provides, some of the social elements, but also alongside it has math and English workshops. We've also run employability programs for people who are not currently in employment and need support to put together CVs, have interview practice, that kind of thing. And we've also funded a series of theatre workshops for young carers. And the idea behind this is that it's building those soft skills, as I mentioned. So it's communication, it's teamwork, and further employability skills. Next up, improving access to advocacy, specialist support and advice. This is potentially an area that we might expect to see some growth in, given all of the difficult challenges lately with cost of living. And so some examples that we funded previously is debt and housing advice for young people who have recently left care, and more recently an information and advice service for people from Eastern European backgrounds to navigate the changes around both Brexit and also the pandemic as well. And then finally, encouraging participation in the community. Some examples of that are a befriending and mentoring course where volunteers supported people who were in prison before they left prison and then afterwards. So it's about that transitional support. And we've also funded activities around sustained community festivals as well. So I'll leave that bit there. If we can touch more on the themes later on. We'll have plenty of time for questions, so we can get to that in a bit. Rich, over to you.
Great, thanks, Lauren. What Lauren and myself wanted to do was just to bring the fund to life even more, hopefully. And these are real examples from the last round of funding. So the round that you're going to apply to potentially this year is round 13, but the last one was round 12. And projects were starting from June. So basically about 2 or 3 months old now, these projects which are live. And in the last round, to give you an idea of number of applications, we had just over 60 organisations apply, and their total request was just over £500,000. Generally speaking, the budget for each round of the Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund is approximately £200,000. What was really encouraging about the last round is of those 62 applicants, 34 were making their first ever application to the fund. So hopefully that's a really positive statistic for you to see. If you haven't applied before, then hopefully you've got a good chance of being successful, because 18 of the 23 grants awarded were groups receiving their first ever grant from the fund. And we'd like to say a big thank you at this point to Merton Connected, to the team there, because they also helped promote this fund and put on a similar online presentation and question and answer session earlier in the year. So we hope that had a big impact on groups being successful when they apply to the fund. And I say there's just 4 examples here of groups that receive funding for the first time in the last round. And you'll see the amounts in brackets, and these amounts were the amounts requested from the groups. So where possible, we don't part fund application, we're fully fund, as long as it fits in with the criteria that we go through as this presentation continues. So the first grant that we're going to mention here was all about mental health and wellbeing, and supporting with some quite sort of intensive support for 12 vulnerable young women. And I think the point of showing this particular grant is that when you're applying for funding, it's not necessarily about benefiting the most people, it's about the quality of the provision, and that you can demonstrate on your application that whatever it is you're requesting funds towards can really help your participants or beneficiaries, to improve skills, to support their mental health and wellbeing, etc. So it's not just about number of people that you engage; it's the quality of provision that you hope you can provide through the grant. The next one I've included because I think it's really useful, because we do sometimes get requests which are towards a salaries post. So in this case, it's a family support worker that supports children and also their families where the child is experiencing cancer at St George's Hospital in Tooting. So this was part of a larger project cost. So the family support worker salary was around about £30,000 or so. So we will contribute towards a larger project cost. It doesn't have to be the entire cost being requested from the Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund. Having said that, what we would look for is that the majority of the balance of those costs, so in this case, the other 20,000 or so, has been raised, or most of it's been raised, when you apply to the foundation at Wimbledon. Because what we don't want is groups where you have to apply to several other funders once you potentially got funding from this particular programme. So hopefully that's positive, that we can look at funding towards a larger total project cost. But the vast majority of groups do apply to us for their total cost. And a similar application in that vein is from the Coutre Centre for Learning, which is one of a few applications that particularly focus on education. in this case for children and young people in the Merton area. So it's supplementary education over the summer months, so running as we speak. And the final one, I wanted to give an example of an application that supports older people. And this one particularly interesting because it's a cross-borough application. Normally, or a high proportion of the groups that do apply to us are applying for work in either Merton or Wandsworth. But this does show that we do fund cross-borough projects. And this one were theatre performances in a variety of settings for older people across the two boroughs. So hopefully those 4 examples give you, make the fund become more real, I guess. And hopefully, I say the good news was that 3 courses for the applicants that got funding last time were new to the fund. So hopefully positive if you haven't applied to the fund before. So that's the last round. And then on to the next slide, I think Lauren's going to go through who can apply.
Okay, thank you, Rich. So we do have a few parameters around who is eligible to apply to the fund, which Rich and I will take you through now. So we've already touched on the working in Merton and Wandsworth point, so I won't stay on that one. No income threshold. So there's no upper or lower income threshold for this fund. However, we do tend to prioritise smaller organisations who are locally based. So part of the reason for that is because large organisations tend to have larger reserves levels and arguably have a wider pool of funders that they can apply to. So where possible, we tend to prioritise smaller, but we wouldn't ever discount larger ones just on the basis of their income alone if you're demonstrating a really good fit with the rest of the fund themes and if you're operating in quite a unique space and addressing a very unique need. We are this round particularly welcoming applications from the groups that you'll see listed there, so facing additional disadvantages on top of the themes that we went through earlier on. And similarly, as Rich alluded to just now, we're also prioritising applications from organisations who have not been funded by the foundation through the Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund before. And the reason behind that is that during the coronavirus pandemic, the foundation did a lot of funding to strengthen the local communities and look after the organisations that we were engaging with already. But we're quite aware that a lot of new organisations have popped up since that time, and we want to make sure that we're accessible to them, and also that we can spread our funding across all of the organisations operating within the 2 boroughs. Finally, current grant holders are also not eligible to apply. So if you currently have a Wimbledon Foundation grant through one of our other funds, so for example, our Health and Wellbeing Fund or our Get Set Get Active Fund, then you're not able to apply until that grant comes to an end. And again, that's just so that we can spread the support that we're able to give across the 2 boroughs.
Great, thanks, Lauren. And following on from that, in terms of the types of organisations that can apply, hopefully most organisations, if not all that are here today, would fit into one of these areas. Probably the largest single type of organisation we receive applications from are registered charities, probably closely followed by companies limited by guarantee over the years. We also do get some CICs limited by guarantee, and then we do get a few smaller organisations that are unincorporated and tend to apply for smaller grants. But so the vast majority tend to be charities or companies limited by guarantee or CICs limited by guarantee. What we can't fund are organisations that are limited by shares. So CICs limited by shares we can support in this instance. Any organisation that does apply must have 3 unrelated trustees if they're a charity, or directors if they're a CIC or company limited by guarantee. Also, what you would need, the applicant organisation must have their own bank account in their own name, and we'd expect any organisation applying to have a safeguarding policy, and that's been reviewed in the last 2 years. Also a constitution as well. and either a set of accounts, or if you're of a small organisation, an income and expenditure sheet from the last financial period, just to show your ins and outs of the organisation in terms of finances. If you are a charity or CIC or company limited by guarantee, then one of the things that we would check when it comes in is that your submissions, the Charity Commission or Companies House, are up to date at the time of the application to this particular fund. Also, what we would check is that if you had previous funding from Wimbledon Foundation programs or the Community Fund from Wimbledon Foundation, that your monitoring is up to date. If you had overdue monitoring and you hadn't contacted us, then unfortunately you wouldn't be able to apply to this particular round. As I say, Lauren did allude to the fact that obviously the majority of groups that are funded in the last rounds were new, but at the same time we do encourage groups that have received funding before to apply. But as I say, your monitoring must be up to date if you have done so. So that's organisations who can apply, and then obviously the how to apply as well, which is really, really important. And the first thing that we all say, and I know it's stating the obvious, but please do read the fund guidelines before you even look at downloading the application form. Because what we want to ensure is that you as organisations do fit the criteria, you're eligible to apply in terms of your structure. So have a read through the guidelines. We try and give as many key tips as possible. But also we produce what are called online application form guidance document. Bit of a mouthful, but what we're trying to do in that document is give you tips on how to complete every single question in the application form. So again, please do have a look at that document. And both of these documents can be downloaded from the Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund homepage, which is on our website. I'm pretty sure that at the end of this session, you will receive a copy of this document with all the details on. But obviously on here as well is the direct link to download those documents, but also to access the application form. So the application form itself is an online document. And what we always advise to organisations is have a read through of the online application form, again, before you start completing it. Jot down some notes, maybe in a Word document. And when you do start to complete the form, you can do it in stages. So it gives you the opportunity online to save as a draft. What we can't stress enough as well is that we all know that we've been online before and our browser suddenly drops off. So please do draft your main sort of text answers to questions in a Word doc as well. So just in case that for whatever reason, you may lose your browser when you're online looking at the application form itself. And then in terms of the next closing date, there's a good month or so to the next one. So Monday the 12th of September is the next closing date at midday. And what we'd ask you to do is when you submit your application form online, with that, to please attach the following documents, which would be a governing document, it'd be a safeguarding policy, annual accounts, and also we have a template for a forecast of your current income and expenditure for the current year. And again, there's loads of guidance in the guidelines and the online application form document around that. So that's how to apply. And one thing I must say at this stage actually is in terms of a types of project we can't fund through this fund are sports projects. The reason being is, as Lauren mentioned, there is a specific sports fund that Wimbledon Foundation run called Get Set, Get Active. So if you are looking to run sports projects, then the Get Set, Get Active will be the fund for that particular set of activities. So that's how to apply to the fund itself. And Lauren's now going to talk a little bit about decision making.
Thanks, Rich. And just on that point, actually, about any sports projects, if anyone here is thinking of delivering sports projects, then feel free to drop me an email after this, or you can say at the end, and I'll add you to our notification list. So when that fund opens up, we'll send you an email to let you know. So decision making, we just wanted to talk to you very briefly about the decision making process. So once the application has come to us, what then happens, and how do we choose which projects are funded and which are not successful. So when it gets to the Wimbledon Foundation and to Rich will have a look through it, and we produce an assessment and a recommendation, but the final decision is then made by a separate panel. So, you know, it's not up to Rich and I to decide who is not funded. It goes on separately to an independent decision-making panel. And these 6 points here are the key areas that decision-making panel looks at when they come to make their decision. And you'll notice once you start to fill out the application form that it sort of follows this plan, and you'll see it reflected within the questions that are being asked of you. So first of all, organisational track record. I've already alluded to the fact that if you're already operating in Merton or Wandsworth, then that would be great to see and to understand. What the panel is looking for is evidence that you are the best organisation, or you're a very well-placed organisation to deliver the type of work you're proposing to deliver within that area and with the group of beneficiaries that you're looking to work with. So some things that you might want to touch on in this area include past delivery and experience, the experience where appropriate qualifications of your key staff members and of volunteers who are delivering, and of any partnerships that you have within the local area. So the next section that is considered is the need. So this is essentially the why of the project. Why is it that you're looking to deliver this project? Who is it that will benefit and why? And then that will link very closely in with the project plan. So that's essentially what is it exactly you want to do with the funding? What will you deliver with the funding? And you can think about this in a very much a who, how, where and when type project. A way that I quite like to think about it is, can you tell the story of a beneficiary from the start to the finish of the project? So just describe their journey. If when a beneficiary arrives at, I don't know, a youth club, they'll come on a Wednesday afternoon, they'll have a maths session, then there'll be a football session, something like that. What is it that they're having? Who are they interacting with along the way? And really make it clear about how what is being delivered is addressing the need that you identified earlier on. That then links into the outcomes. So this is what you expect the project to achieve and what you expect the participants and the beneficiaries to feel at the end of the project. And the same with project plan and need. It should all link up ideally, and I'm sure it very clearly does when you think it through. Networks and partnerships I touched on briefly earlier, but again, this is demonstrating that within the area, you know what else is happening. You're linked in with other organisations that you can signpost to if you're looking to provide some wraparound support for your beneficiaries, and also areas that you can advertise your project to. So how are you bringing in people, reaching out to people to come along and take part in the project? And then finally, the fit with the fund themes and priorities. So again, as Rich mentioned, unfortunately, sports projects are not supported through this fund, but they are separately, and addressing the themes that I went through at the start, the 4 different themes, and the priority groups that we work with too. So that hopefully gives you a bit of an idea of how the decision-making process happens. There's really nothing, there's no other decision-making other than what is there. That's really what each application and project is based upon. And that's what the panel use when they're having the discussions. So, where are we now? What happens next? Yes, so, as Rich said, the funding date, the closing date is September. Then the panel, the decision-making panel will be held at the start of November, and then you'll be notified later on in the month. Hopefully, it will likely be the sort of 3rd week toward the end of, or the last week of November. Project, as we said, work can start from December 2022. So we'll be in touch with all applicants, whether you're successful or whether you're not successful at that notification point. If you are successful, we'll then progress with sending you across a grant agreement and getting the money across to you. At the end of the project period, so as we mentioned, that's for a year, we will request a monitoring form from you. So this will essentially allow you to capture what you did with the project, what the outcomes were, how it went. Usually, very often there's things that were tweaked or changed throughout the project period, what learnings were there, and looking forward into, what's next for your organisation and the project. And then finally, throughout the grant period, we really try and encourage further engagement with us. So it's not just here's your money, and then 1 year later we say, okay, can we have your monitoring form? We'd really like to encourage a more open dialogue within that period of time. So earlier I mentioned that we get quite a lot of items that we can give out. So we'd like to work with you to understand whether you could potentially benefit from any of those types of things, what sort of items you'd be interested in having. And similarly, we host a reception every single year here at the All England Club, which we like to invite all of our current grantees to. And there's other points throughout the year that pop up during which we'd like to engage with you. And of course, we would love to come to you as well whenever, if you've got an event or a particular session that you'd like us to come along and see, then that's something that we're very keen to do and would like to get out and come and see you. So we're nearly at the end. We're nearly to the questions section, but we just thought we'd wrap up with a few final tips, mostly based on what we see coming through in previous applications and feedback we've had from previous applicants of things they would have liked to have known at this point in the process. So the first thing to say is, please do reach out now if you've got questions. Rich and I will be very happy to answer them. Equally, if you'd rather talk to us separately, then feel free to, we can catch up after this session. And also throughout the process, if you start the application form and have got some questions, please do reach out to us. Either Rich or I will be very happy to help. As Rich has already mentioned, please do read through the guidelines and the eligibility just to make sure that you're not wasting your time making applications and that it is the right fit for this fund. When filling out the application form, be very specific and don't feel the need to fill the word count. If you feel you've said everything you need to, you're very welcome to use bullet points, be very brief if that's how you prefer to work. That's absolutely fine. Full cost recovery. So this is really alluding to the fact that we really understand that within a project there's a lot of overhead costs as well as direct delivery costs. So the rent of the venue, of the monitor, we ask you to complete a monitoring form at the end of the year. We'd recommend that you put in to the budget a bit of money to cover the salary of whichever staff member is doing that. So it's really about looking at the total cost of what it takes to run that project and recognizing that it's actually often beyond just the money for the actual delivery. So please do consider building that into the budget because it's something that we are keen to support with the funding as well. Rich, I'll hand over to you for the last few bullets.
Great, yeah, and just picking up on Lauren's point about full cost recovery, groups often ask, well, what percentage, does that look like? And the answer is there isn't a set percentage, but we just say, please be realistic. So if, for example, you're looking at 25% of the budget going towards full cost recovery, then that will probably be getting on the higher side. But as I say, have a look at your budget, as Lauren said, see what you need funding for. So often the most common requests on the budget are for sessional costs to deliver a youth club or older people's dance group, for example. Venue hire is often a key cost. Volunteers, where groups are volunteer-led or volunteers would assist workers. We do look at small sort of resources, small pieces of equipment that you may want to use to, say, deliver a football project. It could be footballs or goals, etc. Not big capital costs, but smaller sort of items there. And that links into the fifth bullet point, which is all about checking your budget. So once you've itemised what you need funding towards, please have a tot up and check that it adds up to the total you're requesting from the Wimbledon Foundation Community Fund. Similarly, what you will need to do is, once you submit your application form, to attach your supporting documents with those. So, for example, your accounts, safeguarding policy, governing document, etc. If there's any problems at all with attaching those documents to your online form, don't worry, you can just contact us. You can email them to a separate email address, and we can give you that near the time. And it's also on the application form guidelines. So don't panic. If you can't attach documents for whatever reason, contact us, submit the form, and you can email those separately to us come the closing date itself. I think we mentioned this sort of earlier a little bit. We always advise drafting your answers. So there's only probably about 5 or 6 key questions on the application form. And have a read of them, and maybe just draft your answers in a Word doc before you submit the form, so you can have a read through, and then it'll be clearer to you in terms of what may be missing from that answer, or you feel you may have given too much information. But linked into that, what's really important is getting someone else to read through your answers. And often it could be someone that's not directly involved with the project you want funding towards. So it could be a family member, it could be a colleague in a job which isn't related to your particular project, because then you'll get a real sense of whether they understand what it is you're requesting funds towards, the need that you're trying to meet through this particular project, what you want to achieve from the project through your outcomes. So often hopefully you get a really unbiased view from someone reading through your answers before you finalise the application itself and submit to us. So hopefully those are a few sort of general key tips. And I suppose one other just to throw in there is always state the obvious. Treat Lauren and myself as if we're idiots and we don't know anything about your organisation and your projects, because everyone is assessed equally. Put on the application form everything you feel we need to know about your organisation and group before it's submitted to us.
Thanks, Rich. So I'll just leave this up briefly, but I think we'll be able to, we can share these slides afterwards too, so you can get our contact details. But the top there, that's Rich's email address and telephone number, and then that's my one there down at the bottom. So we'll share these around so you've got that as well. So now we're at the end of the sort of presentation bit, and now we've got plenty of time for any questions. So please feel free to either shout out or pop things in the chat, or as we said earlier, if you'd rather have a more private conversation, then we can follow up after this.
Yeah, I will keep an eye on the chat if anyone wants to put anything in there.
He stunned you all into silence.
Hi, Lauren. Oh, hi, Lauren. Is it all right if I email you for follow-up after?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Do you want? Did you get my email address?
Yes, I did. I wrote it down. Thanks.
Yeah, fantastic. Please do send me an email.
We'll share the slides around again afterwards around to everyone who's attended as well.
Thank you.
So we've got a question in the chat. A couple of people wanting private conversations, which is fine. We'll share details again afterwards. And another question, do you fund newly formed organisations?
Yes, shall I take this one, Rich? I'll talk and then you can add on anything that you like. We do fund newly formed organisations. I think some of the things that we would be particularly interested in for newly formed organisations is that presence within the 2 boroughs. So, what is your evidence? What is your plan for engaging with residents of Merton and Wandsworth, and a demonstration of an understanding of the 2 boroughs and what the needs are. Why, as a newly formed organisation that's supporting in a particular area, what your understanding of the need in that area is, and therefore why you're looking to deliver across those 2 areas. Rich, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I think for newly formed organisations, also to be clear in terms of what it is, the project that you want to deliver and who's going to be delivering it. So it's really important, particularly for new groups with a limited track record, that you can demonstrate the people delivering the project have the real expertise to deliver, those sessions or activities. Yeah, because obviously it's difficult to demonstrate a track record if you haven't got that, but that you've thought about, all your safeguarding issues, where you want to run the project, but also how you're going to communicate that to your target beneficiaries. So what are the means of communications that you'll do that? And we did see quite a few actually on the last round that have good links with Merton Connected and those networks, which I think is always quite important from our perspective as you're building those relationships within Merton, but also Wandsworth as well.
Okay, perfect. I think Sabitri's got a question. Sabitri. I think you're muted, Sabitri.
Yes, yes.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, Richard. Hi, Lauren. Richard, would you like to check your chat box? I have sent you a message. I think Minority Center, Shabiti. Have you checked that? So I have query. Am I?
Yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I'll have a chat with you afterwards, Savitri, on that one there. That's great. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I think we've got Fair and Square, Jill Hall.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we both volunteer for a project called Fair and Square. We have currently retail premises in Centre Court, the shopping mall in Wimbledon. But we're having to move out by the 1st of September, 9th of September. And obviously we're looking for new premises at the moment, but we can't afford to pay the sort of retail rates at the moment. Obviously, we're developing a way of helping our trainees, because we train young people in retail skills, and we're looking at ways of developing ways of doing that more remotely, which we also had to do during COVID. What I wanted to know was if we did manage to find new premises where there was a cost involved, would that count? Could we claim for the cost of new premises?
And I think just to emphasise that at the moment the Centre Court actually provides it rent free, but because they're redeveloping it, they're basically they weren't paying, and the sort of rent that they're asking we just can't afford. So we're volunteer run basically and provide retail for young adults
training skills.
Training skills for young adults with learning difficulties.
Not just learning difficulties, all sorts of disabilities.
Good to meet you both, and thank you for the update about what you do. It's really brilliant and interesting. In terms of the premises costs, we absolutely would contribute towards that as part of a bigger project. So an application purely for the premises costs would be, oh, they disappeared. Oh no, sorry, you're still there.
Oh, yeah.
You moved on my screen. I thought you'd go. Sorry, so an application purely to cover premises costs would be unlikely to be successful. But if it was part of it was one element of the budget within the wider training package, then absolutely, yeah, that would be considered.
Okay, perfect. We've got a question from Heidi at Merton Home Tutoring. Do you need to be working in both Merton and Wandsworth, or can you be working in one of the boroughs only? One of the boroughs only is absolutely fine. No problem. In fact, most applications are for one borough only. A few are across the two, but the majority are just for one or other of the boroughs.
Thanks very much. Sorry if I missed that at the beginning, but
no, yeah, don't worry.
I had an issue with getting the link, so
I'm pleased you've made it now, Heidi. And we've recorded the whole session, so we can share the link with you.
Yeah,
thanks.
Anything you've missed.
And that's all the questions in the chat so far. So just anyone else, any questions at the moment? No, I think that's it then. think that's
Great.
all the
Well, thank you
questions.
so much for coming along, everyone. I hope, as Rich and I have emphasised, please do get in touch if anything pops up later on. Then we'll be really happy to help.
Yeah, and that's someone else asking for a private chat at the end. So should they just get in touch with you, Lauren or
Yes, if you
Richard,
want
to arrange
send
that?
yeah, if you send us a message,
Yeah.
then we can arrange for that.
Yeah, no problem. And just to say also, thanks all for joining. And obviously the team here at Merton Connected are around to help you as well with your applications or any other questions. Fair and Square, we've got a team here who might be able to help with some advice on the premises query that you've got as well. So do get in touch about that. Always happy to help. Especially we've got, I'm sure all of you know Bo and Pat, our team here. They're actually on outreach this week, helping with some stuff to do with the gas explosion. So they might not be around on emails too much this week, but they'll be back online next week. And you're welcome to copy me in any emails, Abby, ABBY @mertonconnected.co.uk. So I can make sure anything gets picked up. But yeah, thanks again for joining. We will share, if anyone wants the recording, we can share that, and we'll share the slides again with everyone that's joined today. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. I think that's it. Thank you, Lauren, for saving the day by putting the slideshow on.
You're welcome.
Host novice, Zoom host novice over here. So
No, thank you for your help, Abby.
no worries. I hope it's all been clear for everyone. But yes,
Take care.
just get in touch if you need anything. But enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks very much. Thank
Bye.
you. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Richard. See you soon, I'm sure.